I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. Trials are medicines which our gracious and wise physician prescribes because we need them, and he proportions the frequency and weight of them to what the case requires. Let us trust his skill and thank him for his prescription. How came the bodies of animals to be contrived with so much art, and for what ends were their several parts? Was the eye contrived without skill in optics, and the ear without knowledge of sounds, and these things being rightly dispatched, does it not appear from phenomena that there is a being incorporeal, living, intelligent? To explain all nature is too difficult a task for any one man or even for any one age. 'Tis much better to do a little with certainty and leave the rest for others that come after than to explain all things by conjecture without making sure of anything. God without dominion, providence, and final causes, is nothing else but fate and nature. Blind metaphysical necessity, which is certainly the same always and everywhere, could produce no variety of things. All that diversity of natural things which we find suited to different times and places could arise from nothing but the ideas and will of a being necessarily existing. What Descartes did was a good step. You have added much several ways, and especially in taking the colors of thin plates into philosophical consideration. If I have seen a little further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Truth is the offspring of silence and meditation. I keep the subject constantly before me and wait till the first dawnings open slowly, by little and little, into a full and clear light. God, who gave animals self-motion beyond our understanding, is without doubt able to implant other principles of motion in bodies, which we may understand as little. Some would readily grant this may be a spiritual one, yet a mechanical one might be shown, did not I think it better to pass it by. This principle of nature being very remote from the conceptions of philosophers, I forbore to describe it in that book, lest I should be accounted an extravagant freak and so prejudice my readers against all those things which were the main design of the book. A vulgar mechanic can practice what he has been taught or seen done, but if he is in an error he knows not how to find it out and correct it, and if you put him out of his road he is at a stand, whereas he that is able to reason nimbly and judiciously about figure, force, and motion, is never at rest till he gets over every rub. A man may imagine things that are false, but he can only understand things that are true, for if the things be false, the apprehension of them is not understanding. 'Tis much better to do a little with certainty and leave the rest for others that come after than to explain all things by conjecture without making sure of anything. For I see not what there is desirable in public esteem, were I able to acquire and maintain it. It would perhaps increase my acquaintance, the thing which I chiefly study to decline. Resistance is usually ascribed to bodies at rest, and impulse to those in motion, but motion and rest, as commonly conceived, are only relatively distinguished, nor are those bodies always truly at rest, which commonly are taken to be so. Opposite to godliness is atheism in profession and idolatry in practice. Atheism is so senseless and odious to mankind that it never had many professors. Can it be by accident that all birds, beasts, and men have their right side and left side alike shaped, except in their bowels, and just 2 eyes and no more on either side of the face, and just 2 ears on either side of the head, and a nose with 2 holes and no more between the eyes, and 1 mouth under the nose, and either 2 forelegs or 2 wings or 2 arms on the shoulders and 2 legs on the hips, 1 on either side and no more? Whence arises this uniformity in all their outward shapes but from the counsel and contrivance of an author? Whence is it that the eyes of all sorts of living creatures are transparent to the very bottom and the only transparent members in the body, having on the outside an hard transparent skin, and within transparent juices with a crystalline lens in the middle and a pupil before the lens, all of them so truly shaped and fitted for vision that no artist can mend them? Did blind chance know that there was light and what was its refraction, and fit the eyes of all creatures after the most curious manner to make use of it? These and such like considerations always have and ever will prevail with mankind to believe that there is a being who made all things and has all things in his power, and who is therefore to be feared. That one body should act upon another through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else is so great an absurdity that no man suited to do science can ever fall into it. Gravity must be caused by an agent, but whether that agent be material or immaterial I leave to my readers. In the beginning of the year 1665 I found the method of approximating series and the rule for reducing any dignity of any binomial into such a series. The same year in May I found the method of tangents of Gregory and Slusius, and in November had the direct method of flux ions, and the next year in January had the theory of colors, and in May following I had entrance into ye inverse method of flux ions. And the same year I began to think of gravity extending to ye orb of the moon, and, having found out how to estimate the force with WCH, a globe revolving within a sphere presses the surface of the sphere, from Kepler's rule of the periodic times of the planets being in sesquialterate proportion of their distances from the center of their orbs, I deduced that the forces WCH keep the planets in their orbs must be reciprocally as the squares of their distances from the centers about WCH they revolve, and thereby compared the force requisite to keep the moon in her orb with the force of gravity at the surface of the earth, and found them answer pretty nearly. All this was in the 2 plague years of 1665 to 1666. For in those days I was in the prime of my age for invention and minded mathematics and philosophy more than at any time since. Kepler's laws, although not rigidly true, are sufficiently near to the truth to have led to the discovery of the law of attraction of the bodies of the solar system. The deviation from complete accuracy is due to the facts that the planets are not of inappreciable mass, that, in consequence, they disturb each other's orbits about the Sun, and, by their action on the Sun itself, cause the periodic time of each to be shorter than if the Sun were a fixed body, in the subduplicate ratio of the mass of the Sun to the sum of the masses of the Sun and planet. These errors are appreciable although very small, since the mass of the largest of the planets, Jupiter, is less than 1/1000th of the Sun's mass. For it became him, God, who created them, the atoms, to set them in order. And if he did so, it's unphilosophical to seek for any other origin of the world, or to pretend that it might arise out of a chaos by the mere laws of nature. I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. In experimental philosophy, we are to look upon propositions inferred by general induction from phenomena as accurately or very nearly true, notwithstanding any contrary hypotheses that may be imagined, till such time as other phenomena occur, by which they may either be made more accurate, or liable to exceptions. This rule we must follow, that the argument of induction may not be evaded by hypotheses. This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets, could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. And if the fixed stars are the centers of other like systems, these, being formed by the likewise counsel, must be all subject to the dominion of one. We are not to consider the world as the body of God, or the several parts thereof as the parts of God. He is a uniform being, void of organs, members, or parts, being everywhere present to the things themselves. And since space is divisible in infinitum, and matter is not necessarily in all places, it may also be allowed that God is able to create particles of matter of several sizes and figures, and in several proportions of space, and perhaps of different densities and forces, and thereby to vary the laws of nature, and make worlds of several sorts in several parts of the universe. At least I see nothing of contradiction in this. To explain all nature is too difficult a task for any one man or even for any one age. 'Tis much better to do a little with certainty, and leave the rest for others that come after you, than to explain all things by conjecture without making sure of anything. God gave the prophecies, not to gratify men's curiosity by enabling them to foreknow things, but that after they were fulfilled they might be interpreted by the event, and his own providence, not the interpreters, be thereby manifested to the world.